Philippa?
Hello everyone and welcome to the last of our three-part series of webinars brought to you by Speciality and Fine Food Fair and Appetite Me. My name is Philippa Christa. I'm the event manager for Speciality and Fine Food Fair, which is the leading trade event in the UK for the artisan food and drink community. I'm delighted to welcome Jeremy Bowen, who's brand ambassador for Appetite Me, to lead our discussion with our panel of experts today, who will be sharing their expertise and experience of what goes into an effective customer retail experience. Before we get started, just a little bit of housekeeping. If I could first ask if everyone in the audience could hover over the screen, and in the bottom right corner, if you click on the cog symbol and switch it from HD to 360p, this this decreases the bandwidth and improve the experience for everybody. So we'll be taking a Q&A at the end of this session, so do ask your questions using the Q&A function below, and we'll do our best to get through as many of these as we can before the end of the broadcast. So thank you very much for joining us, and over to you, Jeremy.
First and foremost, again, thank you very much, Philippa. We are so looking forward to your show, Speciality Fine Food Fair in September, and indeed, this is going to be a rather fabulous sensory experience, but it would be amiss of me if I didn't introduce people properly. So ladies first, of course, we have Sarah, who is the buyer for Appetite Me, but if I can say more, Sarah's background as far as retail and buying is legendary, and Sarah is really experienced in the sensory experience that is merchandising and the other points that we will cover. Secondly, Diolch and Fawr. We have Damien from Wales, and as you can see from his Never Knowingly Underbranded, his t-shirt, the Pentlin Estate, and of course, Forage Farm Shop. Diolch. And then last but by no means least, we have Simon Spurrell, and people would know Simon from, of course, the Cheshire Cheese company, Never Knowingly Underbranded, e-commerce site, but also has bricks and clicks. But you probably didn't know ITG. His company, not just located in the UK, but 2 other countries. And his background is graphic designing and marketing. So he brings so much to the party. And once again, thanks very much, all of you, for attending today. We know how busy you are. So what we're going to do in respect to this sensory experience, and ladies and gentlemen, it's all about merchandising. But what does merchandising mean? So we can break that down, and we would like to field, if you like, 4 questions. So top display tips, signage, point of sale, pricing, thoughts and observations. Let it flow. Now, as we know, when you merchandise a retail space, it's by category, but which category do you merchandise first, and how do you make that sensory flow work for your customers? And last but by no means least, okay, light and shade, that wonderful word that is music, or is it musac, and temperature control. So first and foremost, I think it would be good to start with Wales. In respect to a top tip from you, Damien, in respect to merchandising, what would be your top tip? Your farm shop has sort of recently opened. What have you learned? What can you share with us?
I mean, speaking in terms of our customers, very much a sort of artisan shop. Our customers like to buy a story, I think, more than the product. So tying in props, like in the bread display, for example, we now have wheat on the farm. Wheat is out in here. So we can bring in fresh wheat that might go in the bars. There might be some sort of story or description behind it. Relate the product to its store form. Try and do that throughout the shop as much as possible.
Super. So, if I don't mind, Damien, could you come a bit closer to the mic and speak up? That would be really, really good. And then Sarah, I mean, you bring such a wealth of knowledge to this. just give me a couple of top tips in respect to visual display merchandising. What are the favourite sort of things that you like to do when you're opening a new farm shop or any retail experience?
Well, I would just like to reiterate that I think Damien's very right, talking about sort of mixed merchandising and lifestyling. So having products that sit together, the adjacencies that work really well together, I think that's really, really key. And I think that is how consumers purchase more and more. So I think that's a really valid point. In terms of the kind of physical merchandising, I always think of things in a sort of a pyramid. So the sort of the middle of the display will be at the highest point, and then building around that. It always works very well. In terms of shelving, instead of sort of merchandising a range across a shelf, you look at blocking and actually moving vertically rather than horizontally, works very well and sort of catches the eye and doesn't sort of inundate the consumer with a range. It's just a lot more interesting and breaks up the product. And I'd also say just to be quite cautious with the amount of product that you put out. I think there's always a real danger of putting way too much product out, sort of losing the impact of that great product because there's so many of them. So I think it's really, really key to kind of, just think about how many products you're physically putting out on the display so that, it's meaningful and impactful.
I think it's interesting what you've just said, Sarah, because clearly you want impact, but sometimes less is more. But it's getting that balance. You don't want that supermarket fixture of SKUs in a row, but clearly you want people to see the story, as quite rightly Damien and you have said. Simon.
Yeah, I would say in store is actually very similar to to an e-commerce website. I mean, there's a lot of similarities. The way that an e-commerce store works is navigation is primarily has to be focused on getting your viewer as quickly as possible to where they're trying to actually find without any confusion. And because you have a short amount of time to actually grab their attention and get them to a sale, and that's exactly the same in store, because it's very easy to actually miss the product you're trying to actually promote, the product you're trying to sell. So I think the most essential thing is that you make it very clear where that journey is going within the store. So it's from the moment you walk in, I think categories, signage has to actually then signify quite quickly the journey you want them to take. So there's a follow-through procedure there. So that obviously you might want sort of the fresh goods leading to the dry goods, to the ambient. But I've seen so many places do this wrongly. Actually, it's not putting enough indicators, not enough sort of signpost as to where you want your customers to go. Getting that flow going also helps actually the flow of people going through your store as well. If you give them a natural flow, I mean, supermarkets do it fantastically. We don't really realise it, but we're being dragged in a certain direction so that we don't cause congestion. We've been sort of brainwashed into going up and down aisles in a certain direction. It's always typically counterclockwise. So use a lot of the tactics the big stores do, because navigation is going to create you greater sales, especially if you can actually have a flow that is a complementing flow, so that you go from cheese to biscuits to chutneys, for instance. That's a natural thing, because then the customer's thinking, you know what, we could do with those, or we need some extras for our cheese boards, as it were, right through to having nearer the end the cheese boards and cheese knives. It's that flow, and I think it is very similar to the way that a good e-commerce site is actually developed, and navigation is key for me.
I think that's absolutely right, Simon. Clicks and bricks follow a very similar merchandising flow and sensory pathway. And I would like to pick up on what Sarah said again, is sometimes less is more, because you've got to be able to see the wood for the trees. And lastly, before we go on to the next question, one observation for me is when somebody reaches the till point, I always think it is a masterclass if that person says, rather than, would you like a bag, have you missed anything? Is there something you can't find? So, second question, signage, point of sale, pricing, all of that. Now, do we just whimsically do click and put a sticker on it, or is there some other clever way of pricing, point of sale, that creates that style and sensory vision, Sarah?
Yeah, and I think it really depends. There's, I like the idea of every item being individually priced, as sort of almost, especially within a farm shop environment. Actually, going back to the kind of price gun, which sort of years ago was sort of seen quite old-fashioned, but I think that's really coming back in now. And it means that every product's individually priced. There aren't any issues if signages move, which is often the case, or there's complete clarity on pricing. Having said that, the use of sort of chalkboards and things like that in a farm shop environment, I think can be really effective as well. They can be easily changed. So I think as long as somebody's got great handwriting, and it's consistent, I think that can work very well. But as I say, there are sort of downfalls to that. It needs to be consistent and neat. So if you've got sort of 5 or 6 different handwritings on the chalkboards throughout the shop, it's going to look really messy and really unprofessional. And so that's sort of something to avoid. But yeah, I do think that the right signage is really, really key. As Simon was saying, it's absolutely paramount when you're trying to direct your customer through the experience, because it isn't just it is also about shopping, but obviously about that sort of the experience of the shop as well, and that sensory experience that we're talking about today. So I think having clear, concise signage, not too much signage. Again, I think less can be more. Certainly when it's in terms of promotions and things like that, I think having too many promotions on at once doesn't give a particularly positive message. But yeah, I think that I think it can work either way. I've seen clients that work with literally price gunning every product, and then I've seen other clients who do work with chalkboards, and both can be very effective.
Simon, obviously to do with your graphic design background, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, very much so. It's a design process, particularly, and a lot of people seem to think that putting pricing out is just a case of actually putting a number out. It's not. It's maintaining and staying on brand, making this signage look like it belongs to your store. That's the most important thing. It's not a random thing, or it's not something that is being promoted by a supplier. That's, I think, is quite often a bit of a negative, really. Especially in the premium sort of garden centre and farm shop sort of environment there, you want to all the time be sort of displaying your colours, your font, your look, your feel. And offers is absolutely essential. And I agree, Sarah, that you can have too many. If you look desperate, and I think any more than 2 or 3 offers in the store, you're starting to look desperate, and you almost are closing down sale. So, maybe 1 or 2, keep them regular. I would say a week at a time for each particular offer, but then cross promote that, obviously, in your social media, on your website, on your emails, etc., and make that theme for the actual particular week. But you can't put enough importance on making that signage look special, look entertaining, and look attractive, because you and again, right to the very point you get into the till, don't give up. Subliminal messages are fantastic. Just keep them popping up. Again, people looking down an aisle, there's nothing wrong with wobblers if they look good. If they look tacky, don't. But wobblers are great because they hang over there and they catch people's eyes with a 2 for 3. Multi-buys is I would say an absolute essential there. You want to try and shift as much stock as possible. You will do that if you actually do a 2 for 3 or buy 2 get 1 half price. I know we know, because we've been doing it for 11 years, that they work every single time there, and people in a way look for that. That's what they've come to the destination store, because they know you've got an offer on at that point there. It's your opportunity to load their basket high, actually, and again, strategically placing your offers is another essential thing, and the signage obviously is once more the pathway and navigation to that.
I think Simon's made a very good point, ladies and gentlemen, about those offers. Bog off. I don't particularly like that word, and I'm not sure I like that concept. But doing that link into that threesome is encouraging, as Simon said, and please, ladies and gentlemen, go onto his website and have a look. A masterclass. He will have promotional activity, but not cluttered, focused throughout the year. Absolutely capturing those peaks like Father's Day and seasonality. So, Wales and the best farm shop in Cowbridge, clearly, or outside Cowbridge. What kind of signage and seasonal promotional activities do you have at the moment in your farm shop?
Well, very much agree with Sarah. Having worked quite closely with her for over a year now. We started off individually pricing all the products. The thought process behind that customers would then pick up the product, view it, read essentially the story behind it. Whether it's a bottle of ketchup, it's not Heinz ketchup, it's a locally produced ketchup, and you're still buying ketchup, but you're buying the story behind it. So you're picking it up, look at the price, and then looking at the product. However, saying that, opening a farm shop in the middle of a global pandemic was challenging. The feedback we were getting from customers was that we don't want to handle products. So why aren't we doing shelf point of sale labels, which we have now started to do. We started using the chalkboards, and with the chalkboards, as Sarah said, continuity is really difficult to get. You either need to have one person allocated to that job, and that's all they do, or you've got a printer. So we've now got a printer, a chalkboard printer, print all the labels, and we've also put other information in there like food miles, distance from the shop, whether it's Welsh, for example, they want to see. Other signage throughout the shop and restaurant, again, fully branded, everything branded. Have to be quite reactive because one day you might have a visit from a customer who has a query and you think, well, actually, that's a really good point. We need to put a sign up for that. It needs to be branded, very reactive.
Thank you. Well put. And question 3, and this is so fantastic because it's about thoughts and observation. Nobody's got the right answer, but I think a shared experience and shared knowledge is always useful, and that's why going back to obviously Philippa and wonderful Montgomery, and indeed specialty fine food, for me is you can go to farm shops. Simon mentioned the malt supermarkets, delis, farm shops, and really learn from what they're doing. But also attending a trade show like Specialty Fine Food in September is also a great learning curve for everything that we're talking today that is sensory. Question 3, and if we can, because we're not running out of time, but we need to get a wriggle on and make sure that when Philippa comes in at the end with questions from the audience, we've got enough time to celebrate those questions. So let it flow. This is one of the biggies. And I think I'd like to start, if I may, with Sarah again. If you had to map out the flow of a farm shop without going into too much detail, where would you start and where would you end with which category? How would you merchandise? What category would you start with and what category would you end? Or is it not as simple as that, Sarah?
Simon touched on this earlier. I think fresh categories as you come into the shop for several reasons, especially if you've got fresh flowers in the farm shop. That sensory experience, it's not just a visual, but also the fragrance as you come in, it just sets the scene. So I would always start, if there were fresh flowers in the range, that we would start with those. And then with the fruit and veg, again, there's a certain sort of customer expectation there, conditioning slightly, I guess, because of the supermarkets as well, certainly. But then I think also the sort of the visual of that and the impact is really, really key. It's sort of certain adjacencies, like I would always put sort of a frozen ranging near your alcohol, your wine selections, because then you've got the sort of the add-on sale if somebody's buying a cook meal, for example, for the evening, they then want to buy a bottle of wine. We find that works really well. Things like beer and snacking, we always find those two categories work incredibly well together in a farm shop environment. So certainly that's, yeah. So I would say I would start with the fresh and the flowers, certainly, and then probably end with the alcohol. To be honest,
I think this sums up your life, Sarah.
Yeah,
Starting with flowers, you're going on to food, as in something quick, and a bottle of very good wine.
Yeah.
I think I concur.
What's wrong with that?
Job done. But I think it can be that simple. Is people buy with their eyes, the flow, that sensory journey, and I couldn't agree with you more. I very much appreciate the supermarkets do it, but Simon mentioned this earlier on. Learn from the supermarkets. That doesn't mean you need to follow them.
No.
What they do is they put flowers at the start. You don't need to do that kind of supermarket plastic bucket scenario, but flowers, that visual message, and also the margin on flowers is rather lovely. And also the immediacy, they come in, and that pickup potential. And also that pickup potential, as you said, nice meal, out of the freezer, reaching over for a bottle of wine, job done. So what happens in Wales? What happens in your farm shop in respect to the journey and the flow? What do you start with? What do you finish, sir?
Again, very, very much agree with Sarah that the initial visual impact of a fresh veg display, for example, or flowers, very much sets the tone, I think, for the journey throughout the shop. Trying to take the customer throughout the shop every step. So, for example, in our farm shop, it's far ahead. There's fresh meat, which is the sort of in our crowd, if you will. So they are constantly subconsciously consuming towards that butcher. The only thing to be conscious of, possibly in a smaller farm shop, is that has the potential then to be a choke point. We are finding very good. We have a few butchers, but everyone is sort of migrating towards. But it is very much about telling the story all the way through. So, just touching again on the visual merchandising, what products being sold, and it is very much a sort of journey as the customer's travelling around. And it's about educating the customer as well.
I think that's two very valid points. One, we can always learn, and we can always tweak and change that journey. And secondly, the customer, no matter how many years and what you do, is always going to be king. Simon, as quick as you can, please.
Yeah, okay. I think the journey, again, as I mentioned before, so reiterated, is the follow the big boys. At the end of the day, they've spent a fortune on this. They've spent millions of pounds on working out and how to actually best achieve greatest sales. Steal it, pinch it, because we haven't got millions of pounds to do it. There's no shame in that. Copy like that. That would be my suggestion. One of the most important things in your positional, I would say, is get your own brand products in there first. Don't give a like-for-like supplier of a particular product first chance at the bite of the cherry there. Get your products in first and strategically place your like-for-like range of other products slightly further away, so that they've actually already chosen to pick your product, which typically you'll have a greater margin on, and that's what it's all about at the end of the day. But again, as has been mentioned there, it is an education process in that journey as well. Make sure that there is actually a reason and a logical sort of display and journey through the stores. That would be my top tip.
Thank you, Simon. Right, we're going to move on at a heady pace now. So last question, and then Philippa will be joining us with, I know there's been quite a few questions coming through from the people who've been viewing us, and I know they're very grateful for all of your thoughts and observations and experience over the last 25 minutes. So if I could just pop from box to box, how important, Simon, do you think music is within a retail setting?
I think it depends on the ambience you're trying to create. Really, I think it can be add to the ambience, but it can also actually detract from it as well. I think the level of sound has to be very, very specifically catered for. The older generation who typically actually visit premium stores, farm shops, etc. Quite often I know, because my parents are related, and the deaf as opposed is not the rude thing to say. They've got hearing aids, and so they pick up sound, and they found it very annoying. So it's getting the level right. It's getting the type of music you're actually trying to get in there. There's no point having thumping sort of dance music in your store, because it then gives a message out that you're not the rural sort of idyllic sort of dream you're trying to actually sell. So you want it to be very specific and very subtle, I would say.
Thank you, Simon. And also, I think we would all agree that don't please get somebody called sort of one of your lovely team members to generate the music. Buy into a music package. It's not about their taste, as Simon said, it's about taste. So, second question, if I could ask Damien, and just a quick answer, if I may, is lighting. I know your farm shop very well. How important was getting the lighting right? Just an overview. How much effort did you put into it?
We instructed a specialist architect who worked with vineyards, sort of wine displays. So she had a experience personally. If I'm honest, although we do try and use lighting, particularly on the alcohol stand more than anything, and in the fresh meat counter, just to accentuate those products. But I haven't really got anything more to add on that one, I'm afraid.
No, and I think your meat counter, we were talking about this earlier on offline, is an absolute triumph. So congratulations.
Thank
Sarah, we go on to temperature control. Do you want to heat up the customer? Do you want to leave them cold? What is the right way to manage heating? Because look, in a lot of places, you've got those doors opening back and forth. Cold or hot? I don't know. It's a tricky one.
It is. I think the sort of perfect balance is a bit of a balance between the two. You don't want a customer to be too hot, and you certainly don't want a customer to be too cold. If you've got too much heat in a shop, and we're thinking about sort of like multi-decks that generate a lot of heat, and all the kind of chillers in a shop that already create a lot of heat. It's really important to sort of have some kind of temperature control. Not just for the customer experience, but also for the product in the shop. And, in the summer months, it's frequent that chillers will break down, etc., because of the heat, which then obviously has a detrimental effect on the products that you're then selling, the customers are then buying. So, too much heat is definitely not a good thing. It's a balance between the two, really, certainly. So, a fine balance. And I guess what's too hot for some people is too, it's all right for others. So it's really difficult to find a sort of a temperature that sort of suits all.
I think it's very interesting what you said in respect to multi-decks, refrigerated shelving, and other bits of kit that give off heat. Because if we can remember last year at Easter, we had some rather nice weather. And so with those wonderful Easter eggs, and as Simon would agree, and I'm sure Damien and you, front of house, flowers removed, it was all about Easter. But then that chocolate was melting in a lot of locations last year. So, as you said, it's about keeping the balance right for the actual customer, because Simon mentioned it with music. You've got to celebrate that customer's taste, but also you've got to get it right in respect to the product as well. So at this point, Philippa is going to be joining us in a moment and taking over in respect to asking questions from the myriad of people who have joined us over the last half an hour. But while in advance of Philippa joining us, Simon, if you could give somebody one top tip in respect to that sensory experience and opening a retail unit, apart from don't, it's really hard work, what would it be?
I think it would have to be focus on customer loyalty. So I would recommend anybody to have a customer loyalty scheme within their store, but make it exceptionally obvious to people coming in that they can join that customer loyalty. Just the very fact somebody's got a card gives them they feel that they belong to you, become part of the family. So drive them towards that experience within the store, which is to join the family of your business. You've got that customer then forever almost if you look after them. So again, make that part of the journey. Drag them towards becoming a loyal brand. And again, big stores do it. Copy exactly what they do. It works.
I think at this point, because I can see the legend that is Philippa, who's joined us now, I would like to, and I think thank you very much for that, Simon, because it's reiterated that it doesn't matter what we do in store, the customer, it doesn't matter what retail environment, what the product offering is, if you don't engage and the customer doesn't understand you and what you're doing, you're sunk. So Philippa, I understand you've got various questions in your pocket from people who have been listening and hopefully learning a little bit from us. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Jeremy. I am here to sort of pass out the questions that are coming from the audience. Just one thing before we go on to the questions. Damien, I think your sound at some point did cut out. It was definitely for myself, and I can see from the chat maybe some others. So I don't know. I know you had some real words of wisdom. If you're able at some point before we finish, just tap in some of your top tips into the chat, some of the really critical things, just so if anybody did miss that, they can pick up those tips, because the sound wasn't perfect. With the question, there are a couple of questions coming in. Please do add some more if you're watching. The first question that's come across is, how much space would you generally give over to sort of seasonal products within the store?
May I answer that to start off with? I think it's,
yep.
Simon mentioned it, everybody's mentioned this, seasonality is key. And that means I think a table to start off with. We mentioned flowers, Sarah mentioned flowers, but it depends on the shape and size and how much space you've got in your building, but also seasonality and those peaks and that offer. As Simon said earlier on, a week, maybe 10 days. Don't have an offer or a seasonal table for too long, because remember, hopefully your customers are going to come back on a weekly basis. They want to see something different.
Thank you, Jeremy. I don't know if there's any other of the panelists like to contribute to that one.
I'd sort of add to that. When it comes to actual physical space for seasonality, I don't think you can actually, in a way, have too much space in the sense that most people are coming to your store because that's the difference you've got. You need to be shouting on brand. We come to us because we're giving you the local and fresh alternative, and that is absolutely the primary point that most people come to premium stores in the first place. You know, they're willing to pay more if they're thinking they're getting something special. So really make that the primary focus as soon as they walk through the door will be my recommendation as well. Don't stuff it away or hide it away. Don't make them go and find it. Absolutely throw it straight in the face when they walk in. So I would say, you know, you want to be having the first at least 30-40% of your visual space when you walk through the door hitting that seasonal produce you've got. But again, as we said before, keep it fresh, keep it moving, keep things moving about, because nobody wants to keep going and see the same thing over again, because they said, well, I've been there. You know, you want them coming in, what have they done now? What's new? And that's the key to this, is actually keeping interest.
Great. Sorry, go ahead, Sarah.
I was just going to say, in terms of seasonalities, I was thinking in terms of a Christmas range, you know, if possible, if you were able to kind of use additional space rather than your current retail space, the sales aren't really conflicting with your all year round products. So you've actually, you know, you're actually adding to your sales rather than splitting them, essentially. I think that would be my advice. If possible, if there is any additional space that you can use for a Christmas range, I would do that rather than take away from your all year round offer.
Can I just say, I think I couldn't agree with you more, Sarah. A lot of locations will actually put out a marquee or some kind of gazebo, clearly with sides, and then we get into heating, clearly, because it's cold at Christmas. But absolutely, sometimes it's not thinking out of the box. It's just using the space outside your space to add value for that seasonality, and of course that wonderful key word and commercial opportunity that is the C word, Christmas.
So while we're on that, another question has come in. So how early would you start putting your Christmas stock out?
Ooh, good question.
Yeah,
Dear me, that's a good one. I mean, it is always a tricky one, isn't it? If you go too early, you get criticism. You go too late, you get criticism.
Yeah.
It is the holy grail, really, of actually knowing when to actually leap. And I would say, from my point of view, we start Christmas sort of November, at the beginning of November. And but the trick is, again, see what the big boys are doing. Find out, you know, the premium brands that we know, the premium supermarkets. See when they're going, or when because they've done a lot of research into it. Again, they're not just doing it. They're not sat around saying, when do you think? They've paid a lot of market research to actually go and find out what will give them the least criticism and the best head start. So pinch the premiums, find what they're doing, actually the big stores, multiples, and then I would tag onto the back of them, and that would be my my biggest piece of advice for you.
Could I just say at this point, I don't think it's just the malts. I would be looking at Selfridges, Harvey Nicks, Bailey and Sage, and obviously the lovely Appetite Me family of farm shops, together with Burford Garden Company, and understanding what they're doing. But to try and answer your question, and I think Simon's right, and I'm sure Sarah will come in after me, I would say Halloween is so strong at the moment. Halloween commercially will generate you more margin rich than potentially Easter, because it's all about eggs and the malts do them cheaply. So to answer your question, straight after Halloween. Yeah, I'd agree with that, definitely. That's what we do. Yeah. Sarah, what do you think?
Well, I think it depends. Like, so with Forage Farm Shop, for example, that's absolutely the case. Halloween is big for them, so we always look at introducing Christmas at the beginning of November. Also, a lot of the products that we bring in for them are Welsh local products. The ranges aren't ready until sort of the end of October, beginning of November anyway, so it all kind of works very well together. But with a lot of the other clients that we work with, we do launch, I would say, much earlier than that. So we would be merchandising their ranges at the beginning of October, to be honest. And we do find that does work very well. Slightly ahead of the market, maybe, but, you know, in terms of customer expectation as well, that's kind of what their customers sort of would expect. So, it does vary. But yeah, for a lot of clients, it is the beginning of October that we start merchandising. Yeah.
Lovely. Another Christmas question coming in here. Are there any new products or new trends that you are looking to stock this Christmas?
Well, I can tell you from our point of view, we are we've just launched our celebration cheesecakes range. So our tiers of multi-tiers of cheese, a range of these 8 different ones there, and we expect to actually see a large upsurge in that market. I decided to go for that because 190,000 weddings were cancelled last year. On average, there's 247,000 weddings per year. Add those two together, it's 500,000. Now, if you add up also onto that, how many anniversaries, how many significant birthdays have been missed through the pandemic last year? Everybody's playing catch up, and of course, everybody missed Christmas. So my feeling is that celebration is going to be the big thing this year, and specifically into Christmas as well. I think people will want to actually have the big Christmas that they missed and make up for it. So yeah, celebration cakes, we anything from sort of 15 to 20 up to 200 we're catering for with these. So yeah, that's our new big push.
I think for me it is, and it always has been, is gift packs and hampers. And also the word gifting. And that doesn't mean that you have to have 3 things in a box or 12 things in a hamper. You can have a jar of wonderful fruit. You can have an oversized chutney. But make sure, ladies and gentlemen, it doesn't look like you've done supermarket sweep and you've run around and got unrelated objects into a packet. It has to tell a story. Think colours, shapes and sizing. And also, as Simon said earlier on, absolutely tap into a theme or your brand or something. So ultimately it sells a story. And lastly, price points. Price points. So 8 to 10, 15 to 20, 25 to 30, and then do some wonderful comical 250 to 500 hampers that will, maybe you won't sell any, but it's a story for the local press.
True.
And I found that we're working with a lot more of our smaller producers, British producers this year. They are putting together Christmas ranges that maybe we haven't considered previously, but because of everything that's happened with Brexit, etc., we are kind of focusing on more British products and more locally produced products to kind of complement with the distributors.
I think that's a very good point, Sarah. With the Brexit, we're very much aware what lovely Simon is doing in that area. With Brexit, without beating our European friends to death, is, I think, a theme, a very simple thing, the best of British, best of Wales, best of Scotland, best of Northern Ireland, is a really good story this Christmas time.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, just to add to that really briefly, from my experience, I found that being one of very few farm shops in this area, a lot of our producers sort of joined us early last year when they were very small and they've grown. So last year, for example, would have been their first Christmas trading year, potentially. A lot of our producers now are outgrowing their kitchens. They're moving into their garages, they're now renting production units. So their product range is growing, and this will be possibly the first or maybe the second Christmas that they're actually pushing their product out. So we're seeing a lot of new products from our same suppliers. Hopefully start coming through again this year.
Can I just very quickly mention something I should have added there, as Jeremy mentioned, Buy British. Buy British is absolutely smashing all records at the moment because of the problems with Brexit, because of the massive loss of the EU, especially to food stuff producers. The Buy British nationalist rhetoric has gone absolutely epic scale. Our celebration cakes are all British cheese. That's had to be the fundamental part of it. We're waving the flag. We're putting British flags on everything possible there, because ride that wave, get on the crest of that wave there, because all you have to do is just stick a British flag on it, and all of a sudden, it's the thing that everybody wants there, which is great. How long it'll last, I don't know. So jump on while you can.
But can I just say as well, is no matter what you do and what you present at Christmas, it's your opportunity to bring people back in the new year. So whatever your gifting is, whatever your front table is, make sure it's quality or fun or both. Because what you want people, when they've bought that Kilnadar chutney, is they come back in the new year and buy the smaller jar. When they buy maybe that celebration cheesecake that Simon has put together, they then come back in the new year and order the separate components. Always remember quality. But we know at Christmas time you're going to have those chocolate coins in a little pack for $3.99 because you do want a bit of fun.
Thank you so much. I think I'm looking at the clock now. We really are getting close to just over our 45 minute now. So if there's any other questions come in after this, I know you're all available via the Appetite Me website. We can get in touch with you then. And I'd just like to sort of say thank you to Jeremy, all our wonderful panelists, for joining us today, for sharing your fantastic tips. If anybody does have any questions, please get in touch with myself or Jeremy or the Appetite Me team via their website. And just a quick reminder as well, I know we're all looking forward to face-to-face again, so I'd love you all to join us at Specialty and Fine Food Fair, which is happening at Olympia on the 6th to the 7th of September. And our registration will open tomorrow, so you can go on live and order your trade pass there. And the website is www.specialityandfinefoodfairs.co.uk. And there'll be a full content programme at the show, which will be developing ideas that we've already discussed today. So yeah, please do come along. We'd love to see you all face to face. And thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Philippa.
Thank you.
Thank you.